Those who think that Djokovic beating Sinner in the semifinal of the Australian Open means that the big three is playing better tennis than Alcaraz and Sinner, this is a very short view right now.
Unbelievable. I think he's playing like Federer.
It's the biggest victory of his career for sure.
No, I'm hungry.
If player and coach aren't getting along, that's what happens.
5-5. That is where the head-to-head stands right now, and the tennis world has not recovered since. Carlos Alcaraz walked into Rod Laver Arena at 22 years old, dropped the first set to a 10-time Australian Open champion, and then dismantled him set after set until the most dominant player in the history of the sport had nothing left to offer. Career Grand Slam complete. AO finals streak snapped, history rewritten. And that is when the experts finally started saying what the numbers have been screaming for months. Former British number one Greg Rusedski did not hold back. He looked at Alcaraz's trajectory and said what nobody else had the nerve to say out loud, that Alcaraz is on course to win in excess of 20 Grand Slam titles. The admission the tennis world was waiting for just arrived, and the mathematics behind it will destroy everything you thought you knew about Djokovic's records.
As we sit here, I've made it very clear publicly, to me, now indisputably the greatest tennis player that's ever lived. And I've said that, and I'll say it to your face.
Appreciate that.
I hope we can move on from the slightly negative way this had to start.
I believe that I deserve to win, and I'm going to do everything I can do to win. Bottom line is that one. You know, I'm nurturing still the winner's mentality. I just hope, and this is one of my primary goals, is to maintain the body in shape that is.
If I can be reassuring, you're not in bad shape.
I'm not in a bad shape.
I'm not being funny.
So what exactly happened in Melbourne that triggered that admission? Everything. On paper, the 2026 Australian Open final looked like a mismatch in Djokovic's favor. 10 titles on that court, 10 finals played, 10 finals won. A perfect record that had survived 2 decades, 4 generations of challengers, and every great player the sport had produced. Nobody had ever beaten Novak Djokovic in an Australian Open final. Not once, not ever. Alcaraz walked out like he had not read the history books. Djokovic took the first set 6-2. Ruthless, clinical, a reminder that at 38 years old, he remains the most complete tennis player ever assembled. Most opponents crumble in that moment. The fortress holds. The crowd settles. The result feels inevitable. It was not inevitable. Alcaraz recalibrated, came back 6-2, 6-3, 7-5. 45-plus winners, 6 breakpoints saved. Each set more suffocating than the last, until the 10-time champion had absolutely nothing left to offer. The perfect record was gone. The streak was over. And standing on that court at 22 years old, career Grand Slam complete, Alcaraz had done something only the 6th man in Open-era history had ever done.
Cuando se acaba un año se tienen que ver ciertas cosas a nivel de contratos y bueno, pues como en todo contrato, digámoslo así, nuevo, ¿vale? De cara a lo que es el año siguiente, pues uno tira para un sitio y los otros pues tiran para el otro. Ha habido ciertos temas que no hemos estado de acuerdo, las dos partes, y que en este momento, pues en el punto que estamos en la relación, puede ser que se hubieran podido salvar si nos hubiéramos sentado a hablar, pero al final pues, no nos hemos sentado y hemos decidido no seguir.
And done it younger than anyone since Nadal. Djokovic himself had said it before the final. History is on the line for both of us every time we play. He was right. He just did not expect to be on the wrong side of it. To be fair to Djokovic, he was not born when Alcaraz won his first slam. Wait, that is Alcaraz. Djokovic was 38 and still dangerous. He just ran into someone the sport was not ready for. That is when Greg Rusedski said it. Former British number one. 20 years of watching this sport at the highest level. A man who has seen every generational talent come through, get hyped, and fall short of the impossible standards set by the big three. He has heard the predictions before. He knows how this usually goes, and yet there he was, post-AO 2026, looking at Alcaraz's numbers and saying something that stopped the tennis world. Mid-sentence, Alcaraz is on course to win in excess of 20 Grand Slam titles, and if he gets another 1 or 2 this year, putting him at 8 or 9, then who knows how far he can go. Read that again slowly. A respected former professional, not a fan account, not a clickbait headline, looked at a 22-year-old with 7 slams and said the number 20 out loud. That is not hype, that is a calculation, and it is the admission the tennis world has been waiting for someone credible to make, because the evidence backs it up completely. Alcaraz is 7-1 in Grand Slam finals, 7 finals, 1 loss, at 22 years old. For context, Djokovic's final record across his entire career is 24-12. Alcaraz is already operating at a finals conversion rate that makes that look conservative.
Can anyone beat Carlos?
Alcaraz just too good.
Maybe even catch Djokovic.
You don't get to pick your draw, but I bet you in the heart of hearts, if you asked Novak, would you rather play Alcaraz than Sinner? He would take Alcaraz all day long.
He wants to take your best punch, know he can handle it. He just rips your heart out. It's like he wants to beat your mom too, right?
Alcaraz. I've played Novak here. I know how hard he is to beat, and for Alcaraz to do it, was a teenager still at the time, to do it was incredible.
And here is the detail that should genuinely concern every record book in tennis. Alcaraz is the first player in history to win his first 3 Grand Slam finals against Novak Djokovic. The greatest player ever assembled, 3 times. 0 wins for Djokovic. Then there is the 9-1 record against top 5 players at Grand Slams over the last 2 years, not occasionally beating top players, systematically dismantling them at the sport's biggest stages when the pressure is highest and the margins are smallest. Ruzetsky said, "Who knows how far he can go?" That is expert language for, we are not ready to say the number out loud yet. The mathematics, however, have no such hesitation. Here is where the mathematics take over, and they are not subtle. Djokovic had 7 Grand Slam titles at age 26. Alcaraz has 7 Grand Slam titles at age 22, 4 years younger. Same number. Let that sit for a second. The man who went on to win 24 slams, dominate the sport for 2 decades, and build a record that everyone assumed was untouchable, he was exactly where Alcaraz is right now. Except Alcaraz got there 4 years earlier. At his current pace of 1.75 slams per year, Alcaraz reaches 24 Grand Slam titles around age 35, the same age Djokovic is right now. Meaning Alcaraz could mathematically match the greatest slam record in history and still have years of tennis left in front of him.
Grand Slams won, tournaments won, weeks spent at #1 of the world, etc. But my answer is quite consistent when it comes to overall general discussion on the greatest of all time. And I'm going to say it again, which is I'm not going to say whether I'm the greatest or not, because it's not my position to say that.
Nobody is saying that out loud yet, but the numbers already are. And here is where the honest conversation gets genuinely uncomfortable for everyone who assumed Djokovic's records were permanent fixtures. The weeks at #1 gap is real. 428 weeks versus 40. That is not a gap, that is a canyon. But Djokovic built those 428 weeks over 20 years. Alcaraz is 22. He has 15+ years of tennis ahead of him at minimum. The canyon is not a ceiling, it is a timeline. And timelines have a habit of filling up when the player filling them wins 71 matches a year and finishes year-end #1. Speaking of which, Alcaraz is only the second active player to secure multiple year-end #1 finishes. The first, Djokovic. 8 times, Alcaraz is already replicating the exact pattern that built the most dominant career in tennis history, just doing it a decade earlier. The ATP titles gap tells the same story, 101 versus 25, 76 titles behind. Sounds impossible until you remember Alcaraz is averaging over 20 titles every 2 years and has not yet entered the peak years of his career.
Carlos's dad and Juan Carlos had a different vision. Some people think maybe they couldn't get a contract together, but Juan Carlos Ferro also said, hey, I would love to continue. Alcaraz himself had a really nice post saying, look, basically, thank you for everything. You've been like a mentor to me and a coach since I was barely a teenager, and they've done all these amazing things together.
Djokovic's title accumulation did not slow down until his mid-30s. Alcaraz has not even reached his mid-20s. Every single record gap, slams, weeks at #1, ATP titles, tells the same story when you apply time to it. Not a story of impossibility, a story of trajectory, and trajectories do not lie. there is one more number worth sitting with before the final verdict. 9-1, Alcaraz's record against top 5 players at Grand Slams over the last 2 years, not against lower-ranked opponents on good days, against the best players in the world at the biggest tournaments when every point carries the weight of history. 9 wins, 1 loss, that is not a hot streak, that is a pattern. And patterns at Grand Slams against top 5 opponents are exactly how records get destroyed. Djokovic said it himself before the Australian Open final. History is on the line for both of us every time we play. He meant it as a warning. It turned out to be a prophecy, just not the one he intended. The most famous tennis experts are finally admitting what the mathematics have been saying for 2 years. Not that Alcaraz might challenge Djokovic's records, that at his current pace, staying healthy, the records are not safe, any of them. So here is the question that keeps every tennis analyst up at night. Which record falls first? The slam count gets matched around age 35 if the pace holds. The weeks at number 1 accumulate quietly over the next decade. The ATP titles follow the same trajectory that built Djokovic's empire, just compressed into fewer years. Djokovic built the greatest career in tennis history over 20 years. Alcaraz has been at the top level for 4. The gap between them is not talent. It is not ambition. It is simply time. And time, as the mathematics are finally admitting, is entirely on Alcaraz's side. Drop your answer in the comments. Which Djokovic record does Alcaraz break first? Hit like, share this with every tennis fan you know, and subscribe, because this story is only just getting started.